Hello and welcome to the Green 19 podcast. I'm Dominique Yates, joined as always by Ryan Wood and Tom Silverstein. We're finally here. It is game week, just a few days away from the season opener between the Packers and the Lions. Obviously, I'm new to the beat, and before we kind of dive into some things, I would love to get your perspective, Spoon, yours as well, Ryan, since you guys have been on the beat for a while. Obviously, every season opener, home opener, there's always that eagerness, that anticipation. And I know I might even be in a recency bias because of Micah Parsons here, but do you feel like this is kind of up there in terms of some of the big, like, attention-grabbing type week ones for the Packers?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be quite a buzz about him. Now, it's how lasting it is, I don't know, because he's probably not going to play that much. I don't know how much he's going to play. There was no comparison to Reggie White's first game. I mean, that changed everything, and people couldn't wait to see what kind of impact he was going to have on the team. And it actually took like 3 or 4 games before he did. I think people will be pretty fired up. I don't think there was this kind of excitement for Charles Woodson when he came in. Aaron Rodgers' first year might have been a curiosity thing, but I don't remember it being like really hyped up, nor with Jordan Love in his first year. So it's hard to think of a season when there's been probably a bigger buildup.
The curiosity thing is what stands out to me about 2023 with Jordan Love. I was just so damn curious what was going to happen. I was one of the – because I think we all go into games with a general sense of how it might go. I had no idea in 2020. It could have gone well. It could have gone terrible, and obviously ended up going very well for them, but I had no idea. So I remember the curiosity of 2023. Along the same lines, I throw 2019 up there, Matt LaFleur's first game in Chicago at Soldier Field. That I was fairly curious with that, too. Can this guy coach? I mean, he's so young, relatively inexperienced, had really no idea. And, it was, I think, a 10-3 game. I think that was
was brutal.
I think that was the we wanted Mitch to play quarterback game, if I'm remembering right, when Tramon Williams said that. It was like a 10-3 win. It was a terrible game, but they won. I do think, first of all, this feels like week one. I don't know if we were talking about it at practice, Dom. I don't know if you guys have the same sense, but like there's just a different energy in the building when it turns to game week. It is different than just the pace of the day than training camp. My first question about LaFleur today was, this is the team that won the last 2 NFC Norths. This is a team that you've beaten once the last 3 seasons, starting with this team at home. What kind of a barometer is this? And he said, it's about the NFC North in general all the time. Spoken like a coach who went 1-5 in the NFC North last year. So it is. But there's no question that the Detroit Lions are the team that the Packers are hunting. The Detroit Lions are the hunted. The Green Bay Packers are the hunting and the hunter. So to have this team at your home field, week one, first game that they're playing, the Lions, with 2 new coordinators, and you throw in Micah Parsons, this is a game the Packers, it's week one and there's a long way to go. They need to go out there and win this game. I mean, there's a certain statement that can be made. Having gone 1-5 last year, having lost so much recently to the Lions, to go out and win this game.
Ryan, you brought me up to a point that I was going to ask about the 2 new coordinators for the Lions. Even though you said they were in the building, so you would expect there would be some continuity, but in your experiences, Spoon, do you feel like sometimes that is, like, you see a difference, at least in that first week? Like, the Lions will look different from week 1 compared to week 17, but when you're throwing in 2 new coordinators, do you think there could be, you say, a little bit of rust, trying to get a feel for things?
It could be, but, John Morton's offensively, John Morton's a really experienced guy. He's been around the block a lot. He's worked for Peyton. He's worked for Campbell before. He was pretty well respected and pretty highly sought after during the off season. And he may not be the trickster that Ben Johnson is, with the trick plays up his sleeves and everything like that. But you can bet he's going to follow Dan Campbell's plan for how to play offense. And that's be aggressive, pound the ball, use that offensive line, and then throw wrinkles at you. And he will definitely throw some wrinkles, I suspect. I don't think there's rust as much as just feeling out your players a little bit. He'll know his team better 8 months from now, but so will Matt LaFleur and so will Jeff Hafley. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into how that works, especially the first game. Both teams are going to throw stuff out at each other, and then come the second quarter or halftime, they'll settle back into what they do, and then it'll be a little bit different after that,
Yeah, absolutely. So bouncing off, talking more with the Parsons, now that he addressed the media, the coaches, Gutekunst, talked to players in the locker room, just getting that reaction. And it's really funny because there hasn't been one person in the building up to this point. All you have to do is say the name Micah Parsons, they start smiling. Whether it's been LaFleur, Gutekunst, Rashawn Gary, Adrian Cooper.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Just, what have been your takeaways on just not only what he said, but, just the vibe right now in the locker room from everyone.
I hate to use the cliche, although this has been the type of week where a lot of cliches have been used, and cliches are cliches for a reason, because sometimes they are the best way to actually put something. And this is one of those instances. This really has, I think, inside the Packers locker room especially, been the definition of bittersweet. I mean, there is a very intense, palpable, bitter side of this, and there is a very intense, very palpable, sweet side of this, and they're feeling both at the same time. What really stood out to me was Rashawn Gary had just gotten home from the Packers had a scrimmage-like practice on Thursday. Just gotten home, was going to start doing some studying, and he gets a call from Kenny Clark, and that is how he found out that Kenny Clark was not his teammate anymore, because Micah Parsons was. And it was very similar when I asked Brian Gutekunst, on a human level, you just executed a massive trade. What went through your mind after you hung up the phone with presumably Jerry Jones and it was done? And he said, well, the joy didn't come immediately because I knew I had to call Kenny Clark, and that's a really tough phone call. Same thing with Rashawn Gary. He immediately he stopped studying. He dropped what he was doing. He went straight to Kenny Clark's house because he didn't have much time to say goodbye. And the way that Rashawn Gary put it was, I lost a friend. That is a tough punch in the gut. And then you talk to Rashawn Gary about rushing with Micah Parsons, and he knows exactly what that might mean for him. And his face lights up, and that's the sweet part. The bitterness doesn't steal from the sweet, and the sweet doesn't overwhelm or take away from that bitter goodbye. They're navigating both sides of that. Adrian Cooper, why would he not stop smiling? Because you know what Adrian Cooper is, and you know what Micah Parsons is. They are two guys who can rush the passer from the linebacker spot, but really two guys whose talent might only be matched by their versatility. There's so many different creative ways that Jeff Hafley can use both of them. So you put them together, what kind of tandem is that? Yeah, Adrian Cooper couldn't stop smiling. He said a nightmare for opponents. I mean, and he's probably right. So that's been interesting to kind of sift through this whole thing. But there is a ton of excitement for Rashawn Gary. He knows that he's part of the potentially the best bookend edge rush in the NFL. He is a guy that was a Pro Bowler last year, but has never had a double-digit sack season. I've said it since the trade. I'll say it again. I think this will be Rashawn Gary's first double-digit sack season if he stays healthy. There's no question the massive impact that Micah Parsons has on him, and he's aware of that.
I guess what were your takeaways, Spoon, from Parsons' comments and from pressers and just, everything that's kind of transpired?
Yeah, the NFL is a business, and every single guy walks in there knows it's a business and knows tomorrow they could be gone, tomorrow someone else could be gone, And, you lose friends, you gain friends. It's part of the ugly side of the NFL. But I guarantee you, almost every one of those guys was thinking what Micah Parsons could do for them and their stats and their next contract and
Super Bowl.
Yes. And, some of them would, trade their locker mate, or, a teammate from college or whatever in a New York second to gain all those things. So I think it lasts a couple of days and the friendships last. But, the thing you feel the worst about, at least I would be that Kenny Clark doesn't get to enjoy any of the 10 years that he put in.
Yeah.
Like they got a shot, if they win a Super Bowl, he put in the 10 years, he set the foundation, and then he's gone. So, but, that's life. That's how it works. And I think for the most part, those guys are all thinking, all right, Micah Parsons can do this for me. Now, I think they have to adjust their thinking a little bit, because you can't worry about what he's going to do for you. You have to think about, what you can do for him, because he's the marquee guy. And if you think he's just going to open stuff up for you, you still got to win your one-on-ones. You still got to execute whatever Hafley's calling. You still got to, on a twist or stunt, you better take out the two guys so Micah Parsons can get there. It's, they have to. There's a lot of thinking that goes into all this, and most of it they got to put away.
Yeah.
Most of the thinking has to out the door and just do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, it's such a loaded question, and as a follow up, could you even, like, if you were in the defensive room, if you were Jeff Hafley, could you even picture what you would try to do with this defense? Not even so much this week or even the Commanders game, because we've talked a lot about the back soreness for Parsons, but in terms of utilizing him with the pieces around him.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that. So what Jeff Hafley's decision, and the decision will be easy this week. He's going to take his defense and say, Micah Parsons is going here. In my defense, in my game plan for this week. I'm not tossing out my whole game plan. After 1 week, after we've worked on it all through training camp, I'll put Micah Parsons in this spot. I'll design a couple of blitzes for him, here and there. But put him, you thought you had a way you could beat the Lions, and so stick with it. Don't try to, scramble everything up, and not, especially if the guy's only going to play like 20 snaps. That will happen as they go through the season. They start figuring out what the best of Micah Parsons is, what they can do. So if I'm Hafley, I would be really excited, and the wheels would be turning, but I'd be real careful about trying to do too much with him right away.
Yeah, and actually Matt LaFleur made a good point about that. It's like, you don't have to so much worry about a full playbook right now. Just focus on week one, because each game is different. There's going to be a different game plan. So it's not like they gave him everything to learn immediately. Just like, here's what we might try to do for week one. For you, just, what do you kind of see in this matchup, and just how do they attack the Lions, but more specifically, just the assignment the run defense has, because they no longer have Kenny Clark to take care of that interior?
Well, the big question with Micah Parsons is going to be snap count.
Yeah.
And I'll pose it for the group right now. Who plays more snaps Sunday, Micah Parsons or Lucas Van Ness?
Oh, I'd say Lucas Van
Ness. Yeah, I think it's pretty easy, right? That's a pretty easy call. So we're not going to see the full Micah Parsons effect here. What I'll be very interested, I've dug into some Micah Parsons film just from last season. If it's anything like their opener last year against the Browns, what they did, the Cowboys, was they started the game almost exclusively just putting him at left end. And then as the game went on, they switched him to right end a little bit, and then selectively they take him to linebacker, take him off the ball, let him blitz up the middle, put some twists and stunts in. Very selective, but he had a foundational home, and that was left end. Now, that can very well just be Brown specific, and what you see from this matchup, and that changes a week later, and because that's what you can do with him. He is the ultimate queen on a chessboard. You can do anything with him. So when you have that type of versatility, you look at, okay, where can we exploit? So, for example, the Packers are not going to be putting Micah Parsons in a lot of positions this week on limited snap count where he is meant to stop the run. Like, that's not what they're going to. They're going to be very specific on how can we maximize him as a pass rusher to get after Jared Goff, especially on third down, especially on critical downs in critical moments in the game. And then the base of your defense will be Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, and build off from there. So, yeah, they're not going to expose him on the run. I think the question at defensive tackle is a really good one because before, when they had Kenny Clark, before Micah Parsons, Warren Brinson, Nazir Stackhouse, they might have been looking at that essential healthy scratch redshirt year. It's going to be harder now. They still have 5 defensive tackles. But it's going to be, especially for both of it, it's going to be harder for them to have healthy scratch redshirt years. I mean, as it is right now, if Brian Gutekunst doesn't bring in another big body, those guys are going to be counted on at some point for some snaps. And Spoon, you made the point to Matt LaFleur today, and you're absolutely right. It was the same for Kenny Clark. It was the same for Devontae Wyatt. Rookies in this league have a hard adjustment on the interior defensive line. It took Kenny Clark had a half sack his first season. He ended up going to 3 Pro Bowls. It took time. Devontae Wyatt, same thing. We only really last September started to see the full flashes after 2 years with Devontae Wyatt. And now I think Devontae Wyatt, his world's changed.
Yeah,
because he's the guy, he's the leader of that defensive line now. I think if you were to project, I think Devontae Wyatt was going to be their best defensive tackle already this year, even with Kenny Clark on this roster. But there's no question about it now. So can he take a step up? Not just in that he's shown the high end flash of potential. Can he make that more consistent and sustain that over the course of the season? That's a big question for him. So it affects everybody, but from a depth standpoint, especially, those rookies they might be counted on at some point.
Yeah, I guess finally on defense, what are you looking to see from this group with this matchup that they have in front of them? Experienced QB and Jared Goff, a dangerous running back group, an experienced offensive line, great receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I mean, you can kind of pick your poison still with this Lions team. Thoughts on just the defense matching up with this group?
Well, the Lions will look different in the interior of their offensive line. They lost Frank Ragnow, who retired, and that's a huge loss. I mean, that guy was one of the best centers in the NFL, and Kenny Clark and Ragnow often got the best of him, not always, but he was a tough matchup. Now it's Graham Glasgow moving over for guard, and then they've got a pretty interesting guy, Christian Mahogany, and then a rookie, Tate Rutledge. So it's not, they don't have the experience that they normally do, like last year when they were coming in. There's an ability to take advantage of that. Now, I think Hafley's going to have to figure out some ways to, maybe come up with 5-man fronts where he brings Quay Walker down or he brings Edrin Cooper down and, he tightens up everything, puts the tackles over the guards and just bottles up the middle a little bit or forces everything to the middle. He may have to find ways to do that. I don't know if his guys can stand up to the pounding. I'd be more worried or just as worried against Philadelphia. Baltimore's going to be a problem. Pittsburgh's going to be a problem. The Bears, these are all physical teams. And if those guys he's got in the middle are mostly slashers. And I don't know if they can hold up. So he's going to have to do some things to adjust.
Yeah. They need a TJ Slayton because that's what he did so well was he just mucked up the middle. Nazir Stackhouse is 330 pounds. He's also a rookie. But if Nazir Stackhouse can really develop, he is that big body who might be able to do that. So, yeah, before this trade, the run defense was a strength of this team. Now it's going to be a real question mark going forward. And what's fascinating to me is there's no question Micah Parsons on this team makes them a better team. Not by a little, but by a lot, because rushing the passer is everything in this league. If you look at the NFC right now, the two teams the Packers know they got to go beat are the Eagles and the Lions. I almost look at the NFC. I know the Bucs have been getting love. The Rams, they added Devontae Adams. They had Matthew Stafford. Obviously, the Commanders, second year of Jaden Daniels. I mean, there's other teams, but those are the big three in this conference as far as I see it. The other two, this trade might not have helped you as much because those two with Saquon Barkley, with the Lions offensive line, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, they want to pound the rock, and you're not the same run defense as you were before. I think that's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. We can jump into offense because we're more than 20 minutes into this pod. We haven't even mentioned
There's a lot of defense to discuss, man.
There is a lot of defense. Well, honestly, we didn't even touch on Nate Hobbs at all. You could say that's something to keep an eye out on. He hasn't really practiced since early in camp after he had the knee surgery.
I can tell you, I was talking with a source after practice today. Nate Hobbs was not practicing, but he was in helmets. He was not in pads, but he was mimicking individual drills. I spoke with a source and was told that it's still too early to know for week one yet. Now, I think that there is a ton of work to do if he has any real shot at week one, but they haven't given it up yet. They're going to give it the week. He's obviously itching to get back. I mean, I don't. Spoon, have you seen a guy who's not practicing, still in his helmet and mimicking individual drills? Just usually those guys are always in the rehab group. I can't remember seeing that. So this is a guy that's clearly itching to get back.
Yeah, well, it tells you that they're not going to have him do any contact.
Yeah.
He's not doing any 11-on-11s.
Yeah.
It's similar to probably training camp when they had Quay Walker standing out there and looking, and kind of mimicking stuff. I don't know if I wouldn't count on him playing. I think it's a little bit of a risk, and it's not like you don't have another corner.
Yeah.
You can use Carrington Valentine there, and it's Hobbs hasn't practiced. We don't even know what he's going to be like, and Valentine's been there the entire camp. I would expect that they'd go that way. And then, they can use Bullard in the slot or whatever. They'll have to figure out something there.
The fact that week 2 is a Thursday night game also makes this really interesting. Not with Micah Parsons and his usage, with a Nate Hobbs potentially. Like this is not a Sunday to Sunday thing, and being so early in that has to play a factor in decision making. Is okay. You got the Commanders coming to town Thursday night, 4 days later for week 2. I mean that's just a very different quirk.
It is. Well, if a guy was ready for Detroit, I'd play him against Detroit, and then if he's banged up, then I'd hold him out of Washington. But Detroit is the game they got to win. Yep. So if any of those guys are ready, Jaden Reed, I don't know. But if Hobbs is ready, then play him. But I have my doubts.
That's both true, and then also it's true because the Lions are divisional opponent and NFC North tiebreaker and all that. They got to win the Commanders game too. That could be playoff tiebreak implications down the line this season. I mean that's one of the other teams in this conference that they're going to be competing with. So it's not like you're right. Like week 1, that's the focus because of the North, but it's not like the Browns are week 2. It's not like it's an AFC team or a team like you know that there's not going to be any tiebreak implications against the Commanders. That's 2 important games off the bat.
It's going to be big. Also, you think they'll throw Bo Melton out there talking about corners?
No.
No, not at all.
No, I mean they're okay with they can throw Haddon in there, Kamal Haddon, and move Nixon inside if they need a slot guy that's better than Bullard that can cover St. Brown. I mean, there's a lot of options they can do, but you don't want to screw up Hobbs right out of the bat. I can't imagine it if he's not practicing. If he's not on the field practicing in full tomorrow, then maybe he's got a shot.
As far as offensively, this was a question that someone asked me, and I thought it was an interesting question. now that you can say, I guess this is defense to offense, having a guy like Micah Parsons and what he could potentially do for an already, you could say, established defense, it takes some pressure off Jordan Love heading into year 3 at starter. Granted, I still think that this team will go as far as and as well as he plays. He's still going to be a key. But I do think if the defense is rolling and playing dominant, the Packers can get to what they're strong at, running the ball with Josh Jacobs and try to control the game. Do you think that is a thing? Like that is a possible thing, saying like there's not as much pressure? Yeah, you still have to perform, but you don't have to have like the Joe Burrow 400-yard games each and every week for the team to have a chance.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because I think that pressure comes in 2 different forms, all right? Mm-hmm. This is still, with or without Micah Parsons, it is a quarterback-driven league. The Packers will not get to the Super Bowl if Jordan Love does not play at a high level. Jordan Love knows that. He knows that there's a reason why they paid him $55 million a year off of projection, off of what he was going to do in the future. He knows that he has to be that type of guy for this team to get to that point. But pressure also comes in terms of the minutia, down in, down out. Do you feel like you got to make the play every time? Do you feel like you're in the same exact role that Aaron Rodgers was in so many years, where it was literally all on him? Because the Packers didn't have the defense to win low-scoring games. They had to win shootouts. That's who they were. That's a different kind of pressure. I think that having Micah Parsons, having Edgerrin Cooper, Rashawn Gary with Micah Parsons, Xavier McKinney on the back end, Josh Jacobs right behind you, a revamped offensive line, I think having all those pieces does limit the down-in, down-out pressure because Jordan Love knows he's got to be that guy for this team to go there. But he also knows that he doesn't have to do it alone. They've got a very stout, great to potentially top 5 defense. They have a ground and pound run game that behind him. What's the quarterback's best friend? Great defense, run game. And they have that. So I do think that in those terms it takes some pressure off, but in the big picture the pressure's still there because it's a quarterback-driven league and you got to play at that level, at that position for your team to be Super Bowl worthy.
Yeah. Spoon, any feelings on it?
I think Love will play the way he plays. I don't think he really feels all that much pressure. I mean, he doesn't show it. I think the pressure maybe on the floor is okay. Do I get a little more conservative? Because I think that if I punt and put them inside the 20, I've got a defense that can then get me the ball back in better field position. Or do I stay aggressive? Do I keep having Jordan Love, push the ball down the field? Or do I say, hey, just take your checkdowns, and if we have to punt, we have to punt. We believe in our defense. I think that's where it'll get interesting to see. I mean, they want to get, like LaFleur said, you want to get in the lead, and then you can just sick Micah Parsons on the quarterback if you can get in a big lead. But if you can't, how does that change? And how does that what kind of pressure does LaFleur feel to, all right, do I play to my defense or do I play to Jordan Love?
The thing that I'll be looking for, because to your point, Spoon, what has always, I think, stood out to us and what has always impressed his teammates is that Jordan Love plays with a lot of poise, right? But you go back to the beginning of last year when Jordan Love's coming off that end of 2023 and then he gets the extension and he comes into the last year, and it sure seemed like he was pushing more early in the season. A lot of interceptions early in the season. A lot of those were tight window throws that we didn't see him necessarily make late 2023. And then something happened, and he settled out in the second half of last year. But it did seem like he was pushing there. What I'll be looking for is he pushing like that, or does the revelation of, okay, this defense is really good, the run game can really support this offense, does that kind of allow him to push less the way that he did down the stretch last year? I think that'll be interesting.
When you look at just the Packers offense lining up against the Lions defense, obviously there's been a lot made about, you can say, who's not playing right now for the defense on the Lions because they have a lot of guys banged up. Josh Pascal, a lot of those guys haven't been able to participate.
Lee McNeil's a big guy.
But saying,
yeah, that's been a guy who's kind of been tough for the Packers to handle. And I mean, but they're still pretty solid up front.
And
even
Aiden
without
Hutchinson.
him, they have DJ Reader, and they have Aiden Hutchinson, right? And Marcus Davenport is healthy this year, so I don't think it's a huge. It's sort of Lee McNeil is their Kenny Clark, and so they won't have him, but they probably aren't going to be absolutely devastated without him. I think they'll be able to handle it, and they'll be that much better when he comes back. But Hutchinson is he's the focal point, and he's the guy who can blow things up.
Yeah. For offensively, what are you keeping an eye out even more? I know we're going to be watching everything. We're going to be monitoring. Are you more interested in what happens at receiver or left tackle?
Well, Rasheed Walker's the starting left tackle
according to him.
Rasheed Walker, so take that for whatever it may or may not be worth. I won't be making any more jokes about a receiver wearing number 0 after Matt LaFleur dunked on me.
Not funny
today. Apparently, everyone has that moment when they realize that they're not as funny as they think, and I had that today, and that's okay. I'm a big boy. I can handle that. It's all right.
I've been on the beat for a year. I've been telling you for a year, but it took Matt LaFleur, all the Packers coach, to tell you no.
But I think offensively, the thing that you can't help but wonder is what we've been talking about all offseason, which is Tucker Kraft, right? I mean, how high can he go? Right now he's like George Kittle light, but the light is pronounced. He's not George Kittle. Yeah, not full George Kittle. But there's some similarities there. Can the Packers unlock that? Because if they can, boy, could anything really be a boon to this offense more than that? More than having one of the best 3 to 4 tight ends in the league, which maybe Tucker Kraft has that potential. I mean, they've got to figure that out. I mean, that might be your number 1 receiver, But he's a classic. He's a George Kittle light. He's a classic inline blocker that his blocking is really almost as important as his playmaking to that offense. How to figure that out schematically is something that I think that I'll be very curious to see.
I like that. George Kittle light. I guess it sounds better than like George Kittle 0 or diet George Kittle.
Yeah, not those tight ends don't diet. No.
Yeah.
They're big dudes.
It's like no, it's not a generic off-brand George Kittle. Right. He's just a different version.
He's not the Walgreens version. He's
right.
Just George Kittle light.
Yeah. So Kraft is one for you. Spoon, anyone in that area you're looking at?
Well, right off the bat, it sure appears like Matthew Golden's going to be a starter.
Yeah.
I think it'll be him and Dobbs as a starter. And, of late, rookies have had some big numbers, more so than they used to. Now, some of that is who their team is, who they got with them, what kind of, how often do they run it, how often they're going to throw it to him. Mm-hmm. But he's got a chance to be, one of those guys who's up there with 70, 80 catches if he performs right out the bat, and that's if he can perform that way, he'll hold off Wicks, he'll hold off Reed, and he'll get a lot of snaps. Mm-hmm. And they may need it. I don't know if he's going to perform that well, but he's definitely in the mix. He is right now. So Jacobs, Kraft, Dobbs, Golden. I mean, that's how it is. Those are their top 4 guys right now, at least until Reed is healthy. Yeah. And I don't know if he's going to play this week.
Once Matt LaFleur got over the shock of my comedic ineptitude, I thought he gave a fairly good answer on Matthew Golden, which was, he's the one guy that stayed healthy throughout the course of training camp at that position. I mean, this is a position. Well, at one point, you're missing your top 5 guys, right? Because Christian Watson is on PUP. Romeo Dobbs had the back. Jaden Reed had the walking boot, and Dontavian Wicks had the calf. So your first 4 receivers are out at one point. Matthew Golden was able to get a ton of reps throughout, which they really might benefit in September for, because that really expedited the developmental curve, and so that is to his benefit, and probably the Packers' offense's benefit, that he was able to sustain his entire first camp.
Yeah, that's the one thing that it's interesting when I look at this offense, because there's plenty of possibilities, but the question if it all comes together, because you talk about a guy like Tucker Kraft, and I'm thinking about Luke Musgrave. He came through camp healthy. He came through training camp. He went through everything healthy, and he made some really big catches during camp. And that adds a whole new dynamic to the offense. I think that was fascinating. We all did like the burning questions, and we all had different players that we were keeping an eye out on. So he's one that I can also.
Did you use
throw on the
him?
list.
Did you say Luke Musgrave?
He was a guy you had to keep an eye out on.
I said this is probably a cop out. You guys are going to write me for this, and that's fine. I said Tucker Kraft because to me it's like I still think he's got another and I probably shouldn't have because he's already established and we already know he's pretty good. I just think he's got a whole nother level there that he might go and maybe this year. But to your point, Dominique, if Luke Musgrave can do what he did in the joint practice against the Seahawks, that's something that shouldn't be glossed over. That would be huge for this offense.
Yeah, I'm about to say because if it works, like if it as it is on paper, if it all comes out on the field, again you can see what this offense accomplishes.
Who was your breakout guy, Spoon?
You went
Golden.
defense,
No, I went
or did you win
Golden.
Golden? Okay, yeah.
Golden. Okay.
Which again,
Oh, my breakup. Wait, I can't remember. There were two questions like that.
yeah, it was newcomer. You went
Newcomer, I think
Golden.
we all
Oh yeah,
went Golden.
newcomer. I went
Yeah.
with Golden, and breakup player. I said Carrington Valentine.
Okay.
I think he's going to wind up getting some important snaps,
Yeah.
and I think he'll benefit from Parsons as much as anybody because he likes to play the ball, and he could wind up with a bunch of interceptions.
4 straight games with the takeaway to end last year. So that I like that pick.
Yeah, he had what 2 or 3 in camp as well this.
Oh, he
this
had
year.
I think he had 4.
He had 4 in camp?
4 picks in camp. Yeah.
So again, he was very active, no question about it. We talked, and Ryan, we talked about the left tackle spot a minute ago. One thing I would say, at least for me, if I was, after looking at it in family night with Jordan Morgan and essentially how he was getting whipped by Lucas Van Ness, I was like, I don't even know if this is much of a competition. But I think, especially when Walker was out, the more you saw Jordan Morgan, I think he genuinely made it a competition, at left tackle. What did you see, like from your perspective, as it all kind of played out?
Oh, I thought he was almost flawless towards, in his preseason games. I mean, at least from a pass blocking standpoint, I think what separates Rasheed Walker from him is probably in the run game, that Rasheed Walker's a little more nasty, has a little bit more burst in his get along. Rasheed Walker's going to start. I don't get any sign that they're going to rotate. I think it's Rasheed Walker's job, and then he's got to hold it. And I'm sure Jordan Morgan's getting some snaps in practice at left tackle, but I'll bet he's working at guard too. We don't get to see, but in warm-ups he was working some at guard. So they're rolling with Rasheed Walker, and then we'll see what happens.
That's interesting because I feel like we've kind of gone the other way on this. You were at the start of camp. You were the one that really pounded the table on this is a competition. I'm like, Rasheed Walker's the guy. Now I kind of feel like Jordan Morgan needs some snaps.
Oh, yeah.
Like he really he
does.
had an impressive preseason.
He does.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, Spoon. They very well might go with Rasheed Walker. I've gone from Rasheed to he needs to play. He's a first-round pick, and he looked pretty good.
Well, he may need to play, but I don't think they're going to play him. I don't think they played him. I think they're going into this game with Rasheed Walker as their left tackle. We'll see. I don't know. They could use Morgan, but I think Rasheed Walker's their guy for right now.
The thing is, Aaron Banks is back practicing, Elton Jenkins practicing. So they probably have their full assortment of the offensive line best 5, how they view the best 5 with Rasheed Walker left tackle, Aaron Banks left guard, Elton Jenkins center. Is right guard a competition, a rotation there? Is it Sean Ryan? Is it Jordan Morgan? And then you have Zach Tom at right tackle. So there's really only one other place for Jordan Morgan to play. Do you have a feel on that as far as what happens at right guard?
I don't. I mean, I would assume that Sean Ryan's the starter, especially against a physical team like the Lions. They probably want a bigger run blocking guy like Ryan. But if his pass protection is hurting, then I could see him throwing Morgan in there. I think Morgan really wants to play tackle, and I think he thinks of himself as a tackle, and I think he wants to keep competing at tackle. If Rasheed Walker has the job, it doesn't mean he's going to have the job in week 10. We'll have to see.
I don't blame Jordan Morgan for feeling that way either, because I've seen Jordan Morgan at left tackle, I've seen him at guard, and they're not the same player. Yeah. I'm with you. I think Sean Ryan is the right guard because I've seen Jordan Morgan at guard, and Sean Ryan's a better guard. And that you have the two of them go out to left tackle and battle it out. Jordan Morgan's a way better left tackle than Sean Ryan. He was obviously a college tackle, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a spot if they stay healthy. I don't know where the spot is for Jordan Morgan, but I also feel like he probably needs to play some.
Yeah, I mean he earned. You could say he made the competition interesting. Like I said, he really did step out there and he contributed in a big way. I guess we can jump into special teams. A year ago, probably on this day, we were talking about kickers. We don't have to now.
Amazing, my hair hasn't grown back since we haven't had to talk about missed kicks.
Yeah, I know, right? There was some gray that was really jumping out too during those rants. So you're not worried about kicker. You're not worried about punter. I am curious about the return game. I think that's the $1 million question. Maybe not so much kickoff return because you could still throw Keyshawn Nixon back there at least. But, I mean, with punt return, you got Jaden Reed, who didn't practice on Wednesday, has been battling the Jones fracture in the foot. So even if he were to play in this game, I feel like you would want to save him for what you could need on offense, unless he just, went at punt and just, waved a fair catch the whole time. What do you even think you could start at when you look at the return game?
Let's play pick a punt returner, okay?
Yeah.
You want to play a game, Spoon? All right, pick a punt
Might
returner.
as well at this point.
Matthew Golden?
No.
Savion Williams?
He's
not
been hurt.
punt returns.
Yeah.
Not a punt returner.
Kick returns, maybe.
Keyshawn Nixon?
No.
Do you activate
I
Hardman?
have a guy. Yeah, that's what I'm
Elevate Hardman.
Yeah, that they elevate Hardman for the first game, and especially if Reed is inactive, then there you go. I think that, probably sets it right there. I don't know for sure. I don't know how much Hardman would play on offense, but it's not. I don't think it can be Reed. I mean, even if he's healthy for the game, I wouldn't put him back there at this point. He has barely played. So, yeah, I mean, I think Hardman is the likely guy. We'll see what they think, whether he can help them on offense too. I don't know.
Yeah. And you had said, I just thought of a point, you said you would be more interested in seeing Savion Williams at kick return.
Yes, I think he's got some potential to be a really good kick returner. Abanikanda is a pretty good kick returner too, but he just can't fit him on the roster. There's no way to put him on the 53-man roster.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to give it to Savion Williams because he's been hurt too. They could give it to Emmanuel Wilson. He could do it.
That's the only name I was
That's
thinking.
a safe one to do. Who else could they? Dobbs could do it, but I don't think you want to put him back there. I don't know.
Did they use Heath at all in? I can't even remember.
Not as a returner.
No return? I was say I can't even remember at this point. They were just throwing in a bunch of different bodies. But, yeah, that's going to be something, again, just to monitor.
But to the larger point, the question with the special teams is going to be on the units. Getting those units in line. Because you can't ask for much more than what they have right now at kicker and punter.
Yeah.
Right? And they just extended Matt Orzak.
Yeah.
Kind of a reward for, hey, the field goal battery was lights out in camp. You're the snapper. You're not going anywhere. So they're at the primary core special teams positions. They're in really good shape with Brandon McManus, Daniel Wheel, and Matt Orzak. What can the units do, right? Because if you can have the best punter in the NFL, but if you don't know which side of the field you're supposed to cover the punt, the Chicago Bears are going to run it back to the end zone. That's just what's going to happen. So that's the question to me.
Yeah. Any final words or thoughts as we get ready for Sunday's home opener?
There's just some things we're going to find out. There's going to be some guys that we don't know how much they're going to play or if they're going to play. And once we know that, then it'll be kind of interesting to see who gets highlighted. And that's kind of what I want to see is are there any, different philosophies on highlighting guys throughout, this opener.
Week 1 is always about finding things out every year. You go through the camp process, and I almost feel like you get more questions than answers sometimes, and then you start really get those answers week 1. And I learned early, the week ones are not indicative of the season. Like it's always overblown because it's the only sample size you have, but it's still a minute sample size.
Yeah.
Thinking 2014, my first season on the beat, they opened that year as the NFL opener in Seattle. They got boat raced against the Seahawks. Late that season, they go back for the NFC Championship game. They lose, but they shouldn't have. They outplayed the Seahawks for 55 minutes, and they were the better team on the field that day. You look at, 2021. They get boat raced 38-3 against the Saints in Jacksonville. End up with the NFC's top overall seed in the playoffs that year. Like, week 1, you always have to – there's going to be overreactions and hot takes galore. But you always have to remember that it is – yes, the only sample size. It's such a fine, small sample size that it says really nothing on the season. One of the I haven't talked much about the Lions. One of the things I'm most fascinated with in the NFC picture as a whole is Detroit, because in terms of roster, that personnel is as good as, it's second to none. That is a loaded roster if they're able to stay healthy and avoid the injury bug of last year. But they are also implementing 2 new coordinators on both sides of the ball, and that is not easy. Ask the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles. So that is a real challenge to have 2 new coordinators. Great roster, new coaching. I'll be very curious, equally curious, what I see from the Lions as I am the Packers.
I think that's what it's all about week 1, just finding out some answers to questions. And even for me, it's like I don't believe in it's a statement win. It's too early for that, but I think it's a game you still need to win. You need to win your divisional games. You need to take care of each and every one of those, especially after going 1-5 in the division. So it's a big way to open it up. But like you said, I am looking forward to the overreactions regardless of the game. The Packers win, people are going to have a field day with it. If they lose, same thing. So the overreactions, regardless of how this game plays out, it's going to be interesting.
You don't think this is a statement game, week 1? Spoon, do you think that this could be?
I don't think week 1 is ever really a statement game. I think it's a feel-out game. But when it's a division game and you're at home,
1-5.
You were 1-5. It's an important game for you.
Must win.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of where Detroit and Green Bay will be in Thanksgiving Day, think about last year when the Eagles and Packers just went up and down the field on each other, and then in the playoff game, it was 22-10. It was a defensive battle. So they became 2 different teams over that course of that time, and the same thing will happen with the Packers in Detroit. But while you're at home and you got the first game, you better take advantage of it.
So here's what I wonder, because I oscillate back and forth between the ideology of it's week 1, so much changes to January, it's just not indicative in any way, to but it's Detroit Lions, 2 straight NFC North titles, 1-5 in the division last year. You're at home. Their first game with 2 new coordinators. It sets up well, and if you lose that, that stinks, right? So I oscillate back and forth. What I wonder if they don't win, if it is a loss, given all those factors, how much does that linger psychologically? Or if they win, how much does that linger psychologically? There is a statement element to this matchup. But how important would that statement be, and how much would that linger, win or lose? I wonder that.
There's not much time to let it linger since they play 3 days later, 4 days later.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think this schedule is too much of a gauntlet to dwell on any game, regardless. Like you can't.
Fair point.
You can't start celebrating after the Lions because you got the Commanders, and then you'll have Dallas in week 4. You'll have the Ravens later in the year. There's just too much on this schedule that is a gauntlet for you to get too caught up in any game, win or loss.
But if they lose,
it's a must win though. Yeah.
You see, there you go.
Because
you go back and forth, right? Like,
so no, I don't think
I see it both ways.
So basically, in my terms of saying, I wouldn't call it a statement game. Like if they win this game, I'm like, you can go ahead and mark it in. Like this team is winning the division, they're winning the Super Bowl and beyond. Same thing if they lose it, but because new coordinators, new just makeup of it, and it's at home, which I didn't realize Matt LaFleur has not had a season opener at home in his coaching career.
Yep.
Something that I never even thought of.
All the elements are there for this. It
makes it a
win. Kind of a big thing, a game to win here.
It is, because you're going to have the crowd at Lambeau. You're going to have the attention on it. So, what's the game at 3:25? So, all eyes are going to be on it. Even my parents, they're not even Packers fans. Like, what time's the game? Like, we want to watch this.
Yeah,
so.
people be watching.
Yeah, I won't be playing. I don't know why they want to watch, but
my parents do the same thing.
they're still invested, I guess, in that regard. So they just love their baby boy. So let's get out of here now and get ready for Sunday's game. And we really do appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the Green 19 podcast. Sunday, 3:25 p.m. Lambeau Field, Packers versus Lions. It is a big game. We don't know if it's just a statement game just yet. For Ryan Wood, Tom Silverstein, I'm Dominique Yates. Thank you all.